Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's live podcast, where we dive into the most controversial, shocking, and game changing news stories of the week. From political intrigue and economic surprises to mysterious drones and heartbreaking headlines, we're covering it all. Buckle up. It's going to be a wild ride. My name's Kevin, and I started this channel a couple weeks ago, and this is my first live feed, never done it before. So I figured I would give it a shot, and I'm really super nervous about it. And I had all kinds of technical issue, but here we are. So I'm here to navigate through what happened this week. Some of the top news stories, some facts, some real talk. Cover Biden's health rumors, the Fed Reserve, shaking things up. Elon Musk, Trump, changing Congress's mind. Strange drones in New Jersey, and talk a little bit about the thing that happened in Wisconsin and even in Maryland with the shooters. Very sad. But before we jump in, get a chance, check my channel out. Hit like if you like something, and definitely try to subscribe to it. So, let's kick things off with one of the hottest topics of the week, and it's President Biden. And I think it's one of the hottest things of the week because, if you've been following the election or anything, you would say to yourself, the man's not well. And, of course, it came out this week that, they've kind of been hiding the fact that his health wasn't really good and that he, in fact, dementia. And so, one of the former CNN political reporters, Chris Ciliaza, I think that's how you say his name, he acknowledged that he should have covered President Biden's mental and physical decline more thoroughly. And there's a whole article in the New York Post about it. And I'm like, well, who's been running the country? And then, this other article came out about, Jill Biden's team was warned when she, packed her schedule, she'll make, the president look bad. And, there's reports on, Biden revealing how he, has been struggling, from the beginning of his presidency. So it's crazy. You kind of ask yourself, who really is running the country? There's been a lot of different reports come out saying that, we didn't need the president for this, and we didn't need the president for that. But, we are sending military aid in billions. I think it was 50 billion this year to Ukraine. And we are shooting American-made, well, we're not, but NATO, but it wouldn't happen without our help. But, our missiles and defense systems. And here is, we are one of the most powerful countries in the world, or you could say the most powerful country in the world. And our acting president has dementia, and no one could come out and tell us before now. It's like, do we really think that, as the public in America, we're that dumb, or it's crazy for me to think that, here we are, inauguration's coming up. Trump's won the election. You never see Biden. And this is no disrespect, because my mother passed away in September, and she had Lewy bodies, dementia, and I went through it. I saw it, and I totally understand. And I feel bad. It's not his fault or anything else, but you think about the people and the power that are controlling our country, and they think it's okay, or they don't trust us as Americans, as people. Last time I checked, this country was set up. I mean, people in DC, they're supposed to work for us. We vote them in. But is it our fault? Are we not holding people accountable? Is our lives so busy? So there's a lot of people saying there wasn't concrete evidence of this, and that the aides managed his schedule to conceal his deteriorating health. I think as a public, we have the right to know. We should know these things. A lot of neurologists are coming out, and they're emphasizing the importance of cognitive testing and expressing concern over observed behaviors. Now it's almost laughable. In the highlights, there the challenges of assessing cognitive health. And the Alzheimer's Society's view is the Alzheimer's Society cautions against diagnosing public figures like Biden and Trump with dementia without proper evaluation. The importance of not speculating on someone's health without concrete evidence. Well, with my mother, it was very hard. In fact, to this day, all the doctors, there was no concrete evidence. I've done research and educate myself after the fact. And, Alzheimer's or dementia, they say that over 90% of the neurons in your brain, you don't really see the signs and symptoms until 90% of the connections are broken. So this is not something that just happened overnight. You just don't wake up one day and have dementia or Alzheimer's. And I can't believe that we're supposed to be one of the most medically advanced, one of the strongest militaries, education, financially. You look at everything, and our acting president with dementia. It's mind blowing. But enough about that. I just thought it was kind of crazy that now it's okay to talk about it. So the next topic I was going to talk about is the Federal Reserve, and the old Jerome. He cut a quarter point, and then he's talking about the pause because he's worried about inflation, and it kind of goes back to the original story of here we are living in the United States, and the reporters or healthcare people, whoever, the deep state, whoever, they don't want us to know what the health was of our acting presidents. I mean, they even did things such as, well, we're not going to do a physical this year. Now we have new president coming in. Thank goodness that everybody voted and expressed their opinions. To me, it doesn't matter. I'm an independent. I'm not Republican or a Democrat. I try to make up my own mind, and I listen. And it's one of the things that I really try to do is get different viewpoints on where people are coming from, what they're thinking about. And so anyways, Jerome Powell, the Fed chairman, comes out and he's going to cut a quarter point, but he's worried about inflation. And basically, there's something called dovish and hawkish. And pretty much when the Federal Reserve makes comments, they're kind of setting tones for, or clues or mysterious clues of what may be coming. And he just basically come out and says, hey, I'm worried about inflation. I don't know that it's completely under control. A lot of the numbers that we've been putting out haven't exactly been true and honest. If you went back and looked at jobs reports, if the overall country voted and said, we don't think the economy's that well, I don't feel as secure in my job, or I'm losing my job, or I have a forced retirement, any of those things, and they voted at the election booth and they said the country was going in the wrong direction, and the economic data was trying to support for a re-election campaign of a president with dementia. But now, if you looked at all the revisions of, the jobless claims and inflation and whatnot, and now the policymakers or the people in power are saying, well, things, they're not going to be as upbeat as maybe as we thought. So, they kind of see a slower path going forward. So that really upset the stock market in the sense where, we had 10 days of down um, negativity in the stock market, which is I think it goes back to 1974, which is the first time that we've had something like that happen. So if you go back and you look at things and you're like, are we repeating patterns? I've always heard, history doesn't repeat itself, it rhymes. And then you go back and you look at inflation, you look at the money printing, you look at like everything, and it just seems like we're back in a different time or moving to a different time. One of the things that I was listening to today, we were talking about how the proxy wars, and a proxy war is basically when you have a country like Russia and the United States, or you would have China, and they support a government, or they support a coup, or whatever they might do. And basically they are like we're supporting through NATO, and we're supporting Ukraine, but you have Russia that's sitting on the other side going, look, we made this deal back with Reagan that we would basically end the Cold War, and that they didn't want more any encroachment with NATO. And so what basically NATO has done in the U.S., what the U.S. is okay, is we have keep pushing that NATO boundary closer and closer and closer to Russia. So, some could say that the U.S. is in a proxy war with Russia, and the different games that are being played politically, which it's really not a game; it's pretty high stakes. But getting back to the Federal Reserve, by its lowering its interest rates by a quarter point, and you're 4.25%. Now, what's interesting about that is, I was talking to a home builder, and I work in the home building industry. I do consulting, project management, and we were trying to set up a meeting, and he's like, I'm really excited going forward, because with the Fed lowering these interest rates, people are going to go out and buy homes. And I thought to myself, I said, do I want to engage in this conversation and really talk about what's really happening? Or do I want him to continue to think that that's really what's happening? Because it's not what's happening. So when the Federal Reserve sets rates, it's setting the overnight lending rate. Now, what the overnight lending rate is, it is a metric that what banks borrow overnight to one another, that's the rate that they go off of. And if you were to go and look historically, and you would look at the T-bill, the 2-year T-bill rate. So you have bills, notes, and bonds. So a loan to the government for less than 2 years is a bill. And then the next one after that is a note, which is typically 3 to, I think, up to 5 years, 7 years. Don't quote me, but it's the intermediate length. That's considered a note. And then a bond is usually 10 years or longer range out. So the longer range of what the interest rate is not set by the Federal Reserve. It's set by what the bond market does. So the only thing that the Federal Reserve is doing here is they're setting an overnight lending rate between banks. So a lot of people think, oh, interest rates are going down. They're going down. It's great. But it's not how it works. Because just because the Fed is setting an overnight lending rate, it has nothing to do with the fact that if you are getting a mortgage payment, and that mortgage note that you're applying for is at a, let's say, 8% rate, what that is based upon is typically it's based upon what the 10-year bond is priced at. And then the mortgage company that you apply to, they'll look at that bond and say the bond is at 6%. And they then will take and mark up that bond 2.5 to 3.5, depending on whatever your credit rating is. So if your credit rating is at, let's say, over 700, let's say they give you a rate of 2.25 over the 6%. So your mortgage rate would probably be like 8.25 is what it would be. So that has nothing to do with what the Fed had a meeting with this week and set interest rates. What actually happened was the Fed lowered the overnight lending rate, and that spooked the bond market. And then the bond market got upset about it because they're looking at the bigger picture of what's going forward, because the Fed made these hawkish remarks because they're worried about inflation in the job market, and they haven't hit their mandates. Now, what's a Fed mandate? A Fed mandate is like their job, and their job is to keep typically inflation somewhere around 2% and to keep as full unemployment as possible. And they haven't hit either one of those mandates because you have the jobless or the unemployment rate going up, and you have inflation over the last couple of months have started to go back up, and now they're cutting rates. So they haven't hit their mandates. So basically they're coming out this week and saying, we're not going to cut as many times as we thought. So what happens is that the bond market got upset because it was hoping and expecting something else. What they were expecting was them to say, yes, we are going to continue to cut 4 times next year, and our target interest rate is going to be at 3%, and everything looks fine. But that's not what happened. So the bond market sees that that's not what the message they're sending. So the words are actually more powerful than actually what was done. So what happened is that the bond market sold off, in the sense where when the bond market sells off, that means that the bonds are not as many people want to buy those bonds. So a bond has 2 parts to it. It has a price and it has a yield to it. So if a price of the bond, let's say the bond's $1,000, and if you were to keep it 10 years at 5%, you would earn 5%. The rate would stay the same. But let's say that this mortgage company wants to go in and they want to buy bonds, and the bonds are existing out in the market, and they were at 6%. Jerome says something like he did on Wednesday, and now whoever's holding those bonds, not as many people want it because they think going forward that there's more risk out there, and the risk could be inflation. It could be we need to print more money. We need stimulus. So what happens is now that $1,000 bond out there that was at 5%, it goes out on the open market, and because of his comments, now that bond, they can only sell it for $900. So as that price goes down to $900, the yield goes up to, let's say, 7%. So at 7%, now you're looking for your mortgage, and you have to, your mortgage company or your who's ever going to give you the money, they have to go out and buy that bond. Now that bond is at 7%, and they have to mark it up to make money on it. So they mark it up there 2.25%. So instead of you getting it at 8.25, they went out in the open market, bought these bonds. Because of what Jerome Powell had said in his speech, all of a sudden the stock market sells off by 1,000, the bonds sell off, the rates go up on the bonds, and now your mortgage went from 8.25 to 9.25. And the general overall feeling, because the headlines are saying, is that interest rates went down, and that's the furthest thing from the truth, because we're not borrowing money overnight. We're borrowing money, to use for cars, houses, businesses, things like that are much longer. So it's kind of a long dive into how that works. So this is the 3rd consecutive reduction this year, and we're down to a full 0.25% point decrease, which brings up the fact that every time that they've done this, the bond market sold off and rates have gone up. Now, what could happen is over time, there's more at ease and the rates can come back down and the mortgages can come back down. But if you look back and historically, you look back in the 70s, and with inflation being high, it wasn't the case. There was times when the uh, uh, mortgages on homes went as high, I think, as 18, 19%. So anyways, so the future, the future going forward, the policymakers suggest that they're going to pause and further rate cuts in 25 and be cautious going forward. So they're only thinking maybe now 2 more quarter point rates in 2025, where previously they thought they were going to do 4. So that underlining is telling you that things are definitely cooling down in the labor market, and they are worried about what's going to happen moving forward with the economy overall. They're emphasizing, and their data is going to guide them forward, but don't see anything on the horizon that's going to change that overnight. So they're still trying to focus on achieving their maximum employment in their inflation targets. That's going forward. So the next news story, which is kind of funny, Elon Musk and Trump. I really think these guys are probably, in a way, having fun, because I don't know if you're up to what happened this week. So Congress, this whole government shutdown with, the government's going to run out of money, and we got to put this bill in there. So if you ever pay attention to it, these guys in Congress, they write these bills and they put them in at the last minute, and they're like 1,500 pages. So it's like, who is going to spend the time, even though we elect them, they're supposed to be working for us, sit down and in less than 48 hours, read 1,500 pages, digest everything, understand it, know what the ramifications are, have a discussion about it, go back and forth, and make a good decision. So Musk and Trump this week had a little bit of fun, and I'm saying fun. I don't know that they did, but it kind of seems that way. And they and Ramaswamy, he jumped in and read the whole thing, and come to find out, they had things in there where they were kind of saying it was to keep the government working, and aid for this, and this was important, and the federal workers, you're going to risk a shutdown, and Trump is derailing the funding bill, that U.S. faces a potential government shutdown, and they got kind of criticized for bipartisanship and all this games that they play. Well, anyways, when they pulled the rug back, there was $3 billion in there for a new football stadium in Washington, D.C. There was, I think it was a 40% raise to everyone in Congress, and an expansion of their health benefits. It was just a lot of stuff in there. So, you got to really be careful, because if someone's saying this over here, it's like, what's happening over here? Is this a diversionary tactic? Kind of seems that way. So anyways, they kind of, pulled the rug back, and the rejection of it got pulled. So, you see Elon Musk, he's definitely growing his political influence, and Trump and his criticism, they kind of swayed the lawmakers, and it's kind of interesting to see this going on. And he's not even the acting president right now. they're just talking, and you got to wonder if people in Congress and the Senate, they're sitting there going, um, this might be a very rough 4 years for us. So, it kind of highlights the impact of prominent figures, in on the legislative, process. So, the Republicans in the House, they're scrambling to draft a new funding proposal, to prevent a government shutdown. So it's like, I don't know. I've seen this many times. It's never seen. I mean, even if they have a shutdown, it seems like they always get paid. So, and it's unfortunate around Christmas time and stress. And when you talk about stress, it's really hard on your health. I'm sure the people that have no dog in the fight, that are just going to work every day, it can wear them out. I mean, I know my wife's a teacher in our local municipality. It's kind of the games that they're playing, and they're furloughing teachers, and they run out of money for substitutes in January, and they got to get special permission to take off this, and they have blackout days. And it's like, well, wait a second here, guys. Um, Tax receipts are up. Over the last 5 year building, um, has been at all time, you know, high levels, which, the local government gets their money. Every time a house is built, in our municipalities, every time a house is built, if you're building a house, you got to write a check to the county for school impact fees. And it's just crazy to think. And then they laid off 52 teachers, and it's like, what are you guys doing? And in our state, we are supposed to be one of the most wealthiest, and have good schools and everything else, and we're in the bottom third. I mean, I think we're 41st, and it's like, what are you guys doing? It's just crazy. Um, so, anyways, it's you really wish that everybody gets along, but it doesn't work that way. So my next story is these drones in New Jersey. It's crazy because I didn't pay much attention to it, because you sit and think about it, and you look at you know the stuff that's come out in the news, where I have a friend of mine that's in the Navy, and we're talking about these pilots and their things that they were seeing, and whether you want to call it a UFO, or they have a new name for it, I think a UAP incident, and these drones going into the water, and intelligent life. And well, anyways, now we have all these drones over top of New York City, and I've heard everything. And I started looking at articles real quick on it, and again, it's like, what's happening here and what's happening here is this a diversionary tactic of something else happening? Because if there's these 100 drones that are flying around with red and green lights. Now, if they were military drones, I don't think they have red, green, and white lights on them. But anyways, there's all these drones flying around New Jersey, and I've heard everything from conspiracy to where there's missing nuclear warheads out of Ukraine, and they have radiation detectors on them because some group was headed to New York. I don't know, and I'm not trying to start anything here, but different things. So it's funny is that the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration, has imposed these temporary flight restrictions over these areas in New Jersey because of these drone sightings. And these restrictions are in until January the 17th. And you got these residents, and they're reporting large drones hovering over various areas. I'm sure they're causing anxiety and confusion. It's but when you sit back and look at it, whether it's another government entity or it's their own government or something, these drones that they use, they don't have lights. They can stay up for days. A lot of them repower by the sun. They can travel thousands of miles, and I'm sure deep inside somebody knows what's going on. And if they don't, they probably have a pretty good idea of what's going on. And I'm sure it's something, um, if we were in another country, they probably were experiencing as well. And, you know, governments spy on one another. That's what they do. What is so, you know, interesting about New Jersey? I don't know. I've heard reports about an Andrews Air Force Base outside of DC that, that was reported. Um, but even with all this technology, I find it hard to believe. But it could be possible. They say authorities are investigating the origins and purpose of these drones, and now they're talking about these legal implications. If you operate drones over certain areas, without authorization, can lead to significant penalties, including fines and potential criminal charges. It's like, yeah, I guess you're going to try. I mean, I don't think this is a group of kids, you know, got 100 drones out there and they're doing formation flying every night. I doubt that's what's happening. Could it be China? Could it be Russia? Could it be, you know, um, another country doing it? Could it be Iran? Yeah, absolutely, it could be. One of the things I listened to Trump talk about today was how, and again, I am not a advocate or pushing any political agenda. I just sit back, watch, listen,